On this podcast, you'll find interviews with high-performing, successful individuals in life sciences. On a weekly basis, we cover their proven methods, principles, strategies, and mindsets to implement new technologies that scale to meet the needs of people in our world.
Welcome to the Life Science Success Podcast. My name is Don, and I'm the host. And today we're going to be talking to Raphael Ognar. He's the CEO and co-founder of NKILT Therapeutics. We're going to talk about his career from product marketing to co-founding a cancer therapy organization. And so with that, I just wanted to briefly mention as well, I'm a consultant in the life science space. I help companies scale and manage complexity and increase performance. With that, I wanted to introduce my guest, Raphael. Welcome.
Thank you, Don. Thank you for having me, and good afternoon, good evening to all of you that are listening.
Yeah, it's great to have you here, and I really look forward to going through this discussion. I'm so excited about your company. I know other people know this about me, but I know Raphael outside of the show as well, and we've been talking about doing this episode forever. We're a little bit late at getting started because we were troubleshooting some issues, but we are here, and I'm so excited to jump into the topic here. So, Raphael, could you just provide just a brief introduction of yourself and, you know, what your career is and what kind of brought you to where you are right now?
Yes, Don, absolutely. So, Raphael Ognar, I've been working in the pharma and biotech industry for over 24 years now. I'm a scientist by training, but I felt like it was so long ago that I did actually all my career in commercial and strategy roles. But I always had a very strong affinity to the concept of science and to building everything that I wanted to do on evidence and scientific evidence. Through my career, I started as the kind of classic brand management roles in the country, launching drugs at the country level. And very quickly, I had the ambition to go global because I was always fascinated by first the global nature of the business, but also the attractiveness of interacting with different cultures, different approaches, different businesses, and learning from there. And so I expanded my role in oncology, especially at global level, and also moved forward beyond product management into product strategy, where I had the chance to work on pipeline assets and develop multiple assets in oncology again, where I had actually the benefit of having two of them approved along the way. I also learned the hard way how it is difficult to cancel programs and to kill assets. But it was a very, very interesting job. It probably was my favorite job ever. It was exhausting but fascinating. And it probably was the time where the seed of entrepreneurship started, because in that role, I was more or less kind of a little entrepreneur in charge of an asset and having to bring everybody together from the organization to move it to the next step. And then I moved to corporate strategy because I wanted to understand better the C-suite and the dynamics at the C-level, and particularly the concepts of governance, decision-making, and all these strategic aspects that are critical for a company. So I had the chance to work for two large C-suites as a strategic lead in charge of strategic planning, strat plans, and various initiatives. And I did that for Celgene and BMS. And at some point, I felt that it was time for me to step out of corporate pharma. And I decided to create my own company that was actually a consulting company called Animate. And through this, I focused essentially my activities on early stage companies, whether it was biotech in oncology or tech and real world evidence companies, but always with the angle of oncology because that's where I had my expertise. And through that path, I really cut my teeth on the entrepreneurship world, having roles as a acting C-level or acting CEO or strategic advisor to CEOs of small structure and really helping moving to the next level. And then the bug really kind of started to hit me strong on that aspect. And throughout my different experiences there, I met fabulous people, of which two of them engaged with me in numerous conversations about science and about cell therapy. And long story short, we had common ideas that we wanted to put together, and we decided to create a company. And that's how NKILT Therapeutics was born last year.
I mean, it's a great sort of story, right? I mean, I think a lot of us have learned throughout our corporate life certain key skills that could benefit a transition to any sort of an entrepreneurial role, but definitely the closer that you get to sort of that world of watching the entrepreneurs work, it becomes even more and more exciting. I feel like so. My next question really kind of centers around lessons that you might have learned along your way that you feel really have benefited or helped you in terms of forming your own organization.
Yes. So what I've learned is like there's so many things. I could write a book. Maybe I should write a book about that. But more importantly, first I think it really taught me a lot about myself. Spending my life getting challenges, always going into a direction that maybe people thought was not obvious. Um, Making more often lateral move instead of vertical moves in corporate, for example, trying to challenge myself. So it really gave me a lot of information about what I was capable of and what all were also my limitations. And understanding, where you're good, where you're not, is also very important, particularly when you're going to start to take a very strong leadership role as a CEO of an early stage company. Um, I also want to highlight that through my career, I had the great opportunity to follow leadership of probably the best and in some way the worst leaders. It happens. And I think now when I look back, I see that those two type of experiences were actually very beneficial because it gave me a very strong understanding of the do's and don'ts of leadership, but also it made me learning a lot about how to handle complex situations. Because when everything goes well, when everything is successful, it's in some way it's easy. But when you are kind of facing adversity and difficulties, either because you are in a different form of agreement or you have a different perspective than someone that is working with you, or if you go and butt heads, it's difficult. You have to find a way to get out of it and make things work. And that requires a lot of skills that I may not have had in the past and that I acquired along the way. So these are really some very strong learning. I may want to add another specific item on the key learnings that I had is that I always considered, and it's even stronger now, that you never succeed alone and you never achieve anything alone. And this is really important for me is that when you want to become a leader, you have to learn how to listen, you have to learn how to pause, you have to learn how to step back. Well, in our industry, you have a tendency of running constantly because it's the nature of the business. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it was very important for me to get a little bit to that higher level of realizing, okay, yes, I still need to do 25 things a day. I still have to multitask too much. But at some point, I need to also uh, really listen, think, and breathe even sometime, so I can take the best decision. And it's a good learning to think about this because a couple of times I took decisions based on emotions, and it's rarely a good idea.
Yeah, it's I mean it's one of the first sort of things that that I've run into in business as well is that a lot of people can, you know, get very emotional over, things that we're just trying to solve a particular problem in business. So I mean it has little to do with a personal clash. It's more, trying to deal with some sort of issue overall inside of the organization, and it's important to understand that collaboration and teaming is really critical at those times, and not sort of getting emotional, bursting out of the room, or really just letting your emotions run rampant on you is a difficult challenge that oftentimes comes through experience. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so in terms of being the CEO and co-founder of NKILT Therapeutics, Can you tell us just a little bit more about the company? What is it that you're working on? What are you guys focusing on at the moment?
Absolutely. So, NKILT Therapeutics was founded with a couple of co-founders that are joined me that are scientists, Simon Wine-Hobson and Henry Bell, that are my co-founders with me. And what we did is we had an idea to try to bring a new way of binding through a cell therapy platform. What we have created is first I have to specify that the technology is not a spin-off of any academic center. It has been created by ourselves, and we are targeting a understudied target called HLA-G, and we have decided, instead of going with a classic antibody targeting, we are using the natural receptor of HLA-G that is called ILT, and we created the concept of chimeric ILT receptor, or KIR. That is a form of CAR concept. You heard about CAR T probably, or CAR NK technology, where we're going to apply our KIR into the T cells or NK cells, and our first platform will be NK cell based, to be able to do an off-the-shelf approach, and we are using our KIR NK targeting HLA-G to try to neutralize the impact that HLA-G has on the immune cells, and making the immune cells able to, through our KIR, recognize the cancer cells and kill them. So we are currently in very early stage. We have found out the concept is done, the patents are filed, and we are starting our first studies in the lab. Actually, on the first week of May, we are opening our lab, and we'll be able to launch our proof of concept studies, validation of our IP, the backup studies for our IP. And while we're doing this, I'm intensively fundraising for our pre-seed that will allow us to fund this study and the subsequent one, particularly some tumor work, to be able to show that our concept is more than a concept. It can kill also cancer cells.
Excellent. So it's funny, just before this interview, I received a message from somebody asking me, I guess they were seeing a lot more messages coming in with regards to people requesting funding than they have in the past. And my response was, I find what I've found recently is that there are more people that are in search of early capital, for science like yours, that are struggling. If you get later on and you're into human trials, oftentimes, it gets a lot easier, is my understanding, at least at this point. If you have an AI or a digital product, again, your sort of pathway is a little bit easier, again, but it sure seems like it's really tough fundraising right now. Are you finding that same thing, or are you?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very much. It's the clearly the environment is not very favorable for investment at risk into innovation. A lot of people say, yes, we support early stage companies, but at the end of the day, it may sound a little rough what I'm going to say, but you will have more chance to get money if you do the next CAR 19 that has been done already 10, 15, 20 times than trying to bring a complete new concept, because of course the first question is that, do you have data? Well, no, I don't, because it's a new concept. So I cannot use all the other things that were done with the 10, 20, 30 CAR T targeting CD19 that were done in the past few years. The other thing also is that there is still a lot of money in our industry. That's for sure, particularly for investment on innovation. But it's probably, I would not say easier, but it's probably more appealing for investors to put a large amount of money into something that is already about to get in the clinic or in the clinic, because it has proved already and has cleared already most of the milestones, and is very advanced. So they logically believe that it has more chance to be successful. On my stage, everything needs to be done. So the likelihood of crossing the finish line in some way is much lower, or it's probably the fact that it's further. And so this is also a big thing that I think the market gave bad habits, where there were a lot of people that could enter and exit pretty quickly. And it seems that it's going to be more and more difficult to do so. So when you invest in biotech, you should consider that it's not a 3-year investment. It's probably much more than that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it for sure is a long-term investment. It is one that, um, has a significant amount of risk as well. But, I mean, the idea is we need the funding as well to be able to carry out, these critical steps as well so that you can have data and eventually, get to that next milestone. So, I mean, with that in mind, I guess, I kind of come back to this idea that you wanted to be an entrepreneur, you wanted to start a company of your own. What kind of led you to this point in your career where you said, "Hey, look, now's the right time"?
Yes, that's a very good question. And some of my good friends, they keep telling me now, yeah, this is where you should be. You took too long. You should have started that much earlier. And maybe it's the case. I always felt a little bit out of water when I was in corporate pharma because many people used to say that I was a little bit, I will not say a rebel, but someone that was having a hard time, staying in his own box. But what I have to admit is that my 20 years in corporate pharma and biotech taught me everything that I need to know today. And that's actually something that is very important. I made the move when I felt that I was ready and when I probably had the courage to make the move, because it's clearly not an easy path. It's clearly a lot of unknown when you jump out of the ship, the large ship of pharma, and go on your own. But there's also an incredible thrill associated to it that I've never experienced before in my career, and that's really something very unique. But I think it happened because I felt ready and I felt that I had enough knowledge to be able to go on my own and to carry this project. The other thing that is really important that I really want to highlight here is that I would not have done anything like this without the support of my wife and partner and my kids and family, close family. They were always by my side when we decided that it was time for me to do that move. We had discussion and kind of a agreement that yes, we're okay for that, knowing that I will probably make less money than what I was in pharma, probably be more bumpy and more erratic. But without that support, without that trust, and the feel that they will give me that I can succeed, I would never have made that move. And that's also a very important part of my decision.
Yeah, you also might want to, say too that your wife is in this space, that she completely understands kind of the long tail end of this thing. That this is a long term move. This isn't a short term. Hey, tomorrow this fixes itself. It's this could take years before you start to really kind of come out of the other side. With a drug, hopefully that is impacting patients.
Yeah, it's true. She's a clinician and she's a C-level executive in a cell therapy biotech also. So we have an interesting life of sharing a lot of things and not being able to talk to each other about most of what we're doing because in some ways a lot of information needs to remain confidential, of course. But no, it's she's really for me she's a rock in terms of her understanding of that business, but also her trust and her faith in the fact that we can make a difference. We, as a community, scientists, business people, trying to fight cancer, it's becoming part of our daily life to do through our work that fight against cancer. And without her by my side, I would probably never get the confidence I need to be able to manage my own story.
Yeah. I mean, just an amazing sort of tie as well. I mean, I credit, both of you for making the move together. And, that's part of what I think, marriage, affords a lot of us is, a partner whenever you have to make one of these moves or make a significant decision. So great.
Thank you. It's a fun ride.
So what stage is NKILT Therapeutics currently in?
So I consider we're still stealth in pre-seed funding stage, but we kind of announced that we were at AACR, that's the American Association of Cancer Research conference last week, and I had a little interview over there, and I kind of confirmed that we are actually opening our labs. So if we're opening our lab, even if it's with one scientist for now, and actually rapidly a second one's going to come, we no longer stealth. We are kind of starting the operations. So, but I really want to emphasize we're very early and we're still in pre-seed funding. I'm still looking to try to get up to 1 million of pre-seed funding to be able to cover the cost of all these preliminary studies that we need to do. And hopefully, by gaining this, it will allow us to not only live through the next 9 months, by doing what we need to do, meaning generating this data, but also start some tumor work where we want to showcase that our KIR concept can kill cancer cells. Because obviously, if it doesn't, there is no no more business around that. But we are very convinced that it's something we can prove. And once we'll be there, we're going to move to another key milestone that will be our seed round that we hope to start and get on the first half of next year. And that's going to become where we're going to raise a larger amount of money to be able to launch our pre-IND process.
Excellent. So what has been your biggest success?
That's it's always a tricky question. I always had a hard time kind of considering what I was doing for businesses on the angle of success, because I was just feeling I was just doing my job. So what I could say though is I think very early on I had the chance to enter in well, I was in medical device at that time. I had the chance to enter in a very interesting company that taught me all the foundation and basis of marketing for pharmaceuticals or medtech products. And I had the chance to be very successful, had a great team, great products, moved the needle significantly, and felt that we were having an impact on patients. At that time, it was patients with suffering from continence issues, whether it was paraplegic or tetraplegic patients or even elderly people. And that was a very successful start of my career. That's what actually gave me visibility and had people from pharma hunting me to get into pharma and oncology. But I think during my path in management of pipeline assets, the fact that I could be a strong contributor that led to approval of two drugs in oncology is something that I would consider a success, because it was very gratifying, and also because it required to have a very tight work with a large matrix team with people from different backgrounds, different countries, very different approaches. And this is where I learned the most of how drug development is difficult. But every time you feel you go to the next step, it's a victory. And when that next step becomes an approval, I think it's even very gratifying. So that's kind of what I would consider successes. I will put a personal note on this, because it's something that probably because I spent too much time in my career at work and not enough with my family, traveling all the time, I would say that probably my biggest success is the life I'm trying to live today with my wife and my kids, and how my kids have become two boys in college, finding their way with great values that make me always very proud of them, and that's probably my biggest success.
Yeah, I mean, definitely sounds like a major success on a personal note for sure.
Yes,
What's
it
been your
is. It's
biggest
important.
challenge?
So I don't know if it's a challenge, but there's a thing that gets very strongly under my skin is human stupidity and selfishness.
Mm,
This is something that I really had to, continuously to struggle with throughout my life. And it's actually sometimes I feel like I would not say it's a failure, but the fact that I couldn't eventually convince people to be less idiots, that's sometimes frustrating. But it's you know it's really interesting how I mentioned earlier, if you remember, that I consider you cannot achieve anything alone. And I felt that it was really a challenge for me to realize that there were many people in life, but also in our industry, that are very selfish and that are doing things just for themselves. And it's really makes me sad, because I think it's not what it should be about. It should be about what we do for others and not about ourselves. And that's something that is very, very difficult for me. But hopefully, we can say that it's a minority of people. And more importantly, it's not because you have one black sheep that the entire shepherd is in danger. So we we leave it there. But it's something that is really that every time I face this kind of behavior, it triggers me.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I mean, knowing you personally as well, that I've seen you be somebody that will give and share ideas pretty openly and pretty freely. And um, being somebody like that myself, I mean, I certainly run into it as well. I mean, I've had people continually ask me, um, you know, what does it cost for just getting together and talking? And it's such a strange question for me, because it's like, look, I enjoy networking. I enjoy doing this. I enjoy sort of, talking about people's past and their history, and understanding them a little bit better, and not at a cost, not at trying to charge by the hour or the minute. So it seems very, very strange or foreign to me whenever people do that. They ask those questions. So
Yeah, we need everything to make a world where we live. So
yeah, for sure. So there are three questions that I like to ask every guest. Raphael,
yeah.
what inspires you?
Well, I may sound a little cheesy when I'm going to say that, but it's really my wife and my kids that inspire me today. I'm so proud of what my kids became, but more importantly, my interaction with them, the challenge that they throw at me on a regular basis for good, good challenge. Um, and when I see what they're capable of doing, it really makes me staying humble on what I do.
Mm,
Because at the end, we are very little things if you think about it. In this world, each of us contribute in some way, but we are kind of no one compared to everything that is around us. And I really take this as very strongly, because I consider life is very fragile. We live through cancer, that issue of fragility of life constantly. I think everybody that will be listening to us probably has someone in their family that went through cancer, or that knows somebody that has cancer, and things can stop suddenly without notice. And that is something that made me really realizing that it's important to focus on what truly matters. And to me, that's where I get my inspiration from, my close family. That's very important.
yeah, I mean it's interesting to me as well. So I have three children, who are all adults now, and starting their own lives, and buying homes, and married and things like that. And it's so interesting to watch or think back to that point in time when we first had little babies. You have no idea what's going to happen. And there are points in time, definitely as a parent, where you're a little white knuckled, trying to figure out exactly what's going to happen with my kids as they grow into adults. You hope that they mature appropriately, And it sounds to me like your kids are at great points, at great stages. So, definitely should be something that inspires you.
Yeah,
What
knock
concerns
on
you?
wood.
Yeah, right. What concerns you?
Um, well, you won't be surprised about this actually because you know me, but I'm really concerned about how the world is evolving currently and how this kind of it becomes more about individuals and egocentric attitude more than continuing to try to build a society. It's actually interesting to see how today people spend more importance on how they can be the center of attention and how they can um, be ready to develop outrageous uh, positions just so that people can look at them or just so
Mm,
they can believe that they exist because that worries me a little bit because I think that mankind has shown fantastic um, growth and agility and intelligence throughout the several centuries by really working together. Of course, there were always situations that were difficult. Of course, concept of wars or wars existed, but there are also some examples of elevation and achievements without having to use the force or without having to step on others. And I wish we will be able to do more of that. But maybe we'll have some changes. I mean, you people may not know that, but I'm originally from France, and we have the presidential election this coming weekend. And for the second time in a row, we have the far right, extreme right, that is facing someone that is more moderate, and it's interesting to see that probably 30 years ago nobody would have ever thought that this was possible because they were saying no, we're not going to have extremes close to getting to power. Well, we faced it in the US, we face it in multiple countries, and that worries me. I think it's something that um, I'm not sure we will be able to get out smoothly.
yeah. Yeah, it's something. It definitely is concerning, I hope that at some point in the future we can look back and say, hey, our worry, really wasn't founded, but at the same time, there's good cause for being worried, at least at this point in time, for sure.
Yep.
What excites you?
Well, I'm going to go back to the science a little bit because I've been talking about a lot of things that maybe people will find boring. But when I see how science has evolved, particularly the one that I'm um, focused on, that is cancer science and all these different developments that we have done in the past few decades, this is making me completely excited because we are doing things today, and particularly with cell therapy, that when I started in oncology, we would never even think anything about that. It was kind of like almost considered. I would not say science fiction, but almost. And I actually had a very interesting experience during the ASCR conference where there was an award provided to Professor Rosenberg, that is one of the father of cell therapy, that did a lot of great work with what we call TEALs, and he showed during his award ceremony presentation, he showed a handwriting page of the first interaction when he was working on some form of gene editing approach to create a therapeutic, and he was showing the interaction in handwriting. What were the conclusion and the different steps on their interaction with FDA at that time? So that back in the 80s, even maybe earlier, I think. Um, and um, and it was incredible because not only he needed something like over 9 or 10 steps back and forth interaction with FDA because people were reluctant to these crazy ideas that they were having, and there were even, and he wrote it on with his hands. He wrote like even some people were telling them, people from FDA officials saying, you cannot play God. What you are doing is to try to play God by modifying genes of people. And what a journey we did since that time, where today, yes, maybe people can still believe we play God because we do cell therapy where we create CAR T cells, CAR NK cells, and we modify those immune cells to make them targeting cancer cells and killing cancer cells. And there are a lot of things that we need to continue to learn, but the speed and the depth that science is advancing currently is mind-blowing, and to me one of the most exciting thing, and I'm very pleased that I can be part of that journey. And if at my little level with my team and my peers we can bring a little brick to that wall, we'll be very happy, and we'll feel that we have at least contributed to to give something better for those patients that are in need of new therapeutics. So this really excites me really a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, cancer is, I mean, it's brutal, and in a lot of ways, it's smart. And if we don't apply the same level of intellect to try and figure out how do we one, impact it, and how do we two, work on this idea of a cure or a way of preventing it or what have you, I am so excited with regards to where we're at with one technology. I certainly see, a lot of the things that we're doing with, CRISPR. We're doing a lot with regards to artificial intelligence and using that to narrow down targets as well as, pick therapies, for people. So there's a lot of great things happening in the space there. And then there's treatments like yours that could potentially, change the game. And so, I definitely am excited by the same thing. So, definitely is a great time to be in science and dealing with a lot of the companies that we get to touch along the way.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Raphael Ognar, I wanted to thank you for being on the Life Science Success Podcast. Thank you so much for spending time with me today and sharing a little bit about what you're working on with NKILT Therapeutics. So thanks so much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for all your audience for listening to us. I hope it was not too boring, but one thing that I can be sure about is that I am convinced that thanks to people like you, like me, and all the ones that we actually regularly talk to in some of our networking events that we attend together sometimes, I think this is how we can make things better. And I'm very grateful that despite all the negative little pieces that I highlighted that make me sometimes a little bit concerned, there is still a lot of great things, and being back in person, meeting people again, it's a very, very good feeling that we missed for the past 2 years. So I can't wait to be able to continue our journey. And thank you again for what you do also. And I hope that we're going to cross paths again and again multiple times.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Life Science Success. For complete details about this podcast, including show notes, how to get in touch with guests, and more episodes, please visit www.lifesciencesuccess.com. If there's someone you'd like for us to invite to the show as a guest, please let me know by sending me a message at the podcast website. Please click subscribe on your favorite podcast app, share the podcast, or tell a friend about it. And last but not least, rate the podcast. Thank you again.